Hello and welcome to Reanimated. This is episode 188. It's the post-Thanksgiving food coma edition. And my name is Stuart. Joining me is H.A. Conrad in Brooklyn. Hello!
Hello. Where the air quality is now worse than your air quality for once.
For once in the last couple of weeks, yeah. I'm back to a somewhat normal life. The campfire was put out by the rain.
Woohoo!
Don't no longer have to go around with the apocalyptic face mask on. So
Did you pick an apocalyptic face mask with a cool design?
No, I got those for the kids with like little birds and cows on them, but no, mine was just white mask.
Oh, I was hoping you would have something really awesome.
No, and you know what? It's a weird thing because not everybody subscribes to the breathing the really bad quality air is bad for you, so they walk around without the mask, and then you are walking around with the mask because you're a responsible adult, and you feel like an idiot. You're like the only person going to the grocery store with your mask on, and you have to wonder, is this how the zombie apocalypse begins?
Well, I think it is the way it separates the survivors from the non-survivors, most certainly.
Certainly the paranoids from the non-paranoids, anyway.
Perhaps, but I mean, the air quality thing is something you can actually measure, so yeah I'd go around wearing the mask.
Like,
I approve.
When it's hazardous with a capital H, I mask up, yo.
Right.
So anyway, speaking of things... No, I got no segue here. I'm not even going to try. But Weezer came out with a cool song called Zombie Bastards. And,
oh, come on. Speaking of survivors, Weezer's still around, man. That's crazy.
That's good. That is good. Yeah, Weezer's, like 30-something plus years of banding.
So they came out with this video as well as a new song called Zombie Bastards, and they have a new album coming out in March. They're going to be touring with Pixies, which is... awesome. I just saw Pixies last weekend on their own, and I have to consider whether I will be going to try to get tickets for this thing, though they only seem to be playing really big arenas. But what sets this album apart from others is that they're kind of swearing, and this is catchy... It's a little darker. This is I don't really understand where they're going with this tune, but it's catchy in the Weezer way. So I think you should check it out. We'll put the link to the video in the show notes.
Yeah, for sure. And then also in zombie news, we've got Governor Bevin of Kentucky said some things that, not to get political, we try not to do that on this podcast, but when somebody goes after zombies, then they're basically, peeing in our Cheerios. So Governor Bevin made some comments that suggested that the recent spate of mass shootings in the United States are because of zombies and indirectly because of shows like The Walking Dead. And so Tony Moore, co-creator of The Walking Dead comic book with Bobby Kirkman, wrote an op-ed to his local paper that does get quite political, but saying, shame on you, sir.
We've been talking about this quite a bit, but Anna and the Apocalypse is coming to theaters. I think it's a limited release. We're going to see if Mr. Tiffin can see it out there on his coast. But supposedly it is in theaters as of this week. So a couple of early showings, at least in New York, starting November 28th. And then it officially is going to be released November 30th. And so we'll talk a little bit more about this at the end, but I'm excited to see this. And but for this week's show, we will be reviewing Night of the Comet, and they have actually recently announced that they are doing a remake of this cult classic. And Roxanne Benjamin is going to be starring in this, correct?
This is really just somebody has been hired to write the sequel.
Okay. My bad. So yes, she will be writing it. I mean, I don't know. It would be kind of cool to see some of the folks that were in the original doing some cameos or being involved in this. So, not too much information on this other than that they're doing this.
This is about as early as it gets in terms of the process. Whether or not this script even ever sees the light of day is,
I think it's early days yet. We could see, I don't know, but I could see this. I think it's gonna roll, but we'll see. But in any case, that's interesting. Let's, are you ready to dive in?
Gosh, am I ready to watch the Comet show that night? Absolutely, but only from inside a steel-lined room.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk a little bit about this particular mythology and all of that. But
I think that
um,
I think that the mythology is exactly where to begin. And
yeah,
so this 1984
but
film came
but
out
I was gonna say, but where we should really begin is in 1984.
1984, and that's when. So this movie really reminded me of Day of the Triffids. I don't know if you've ever
hmm
seen that. Have you
Oh
seen that
yeah,
that whole miniseries?
yeah, and I think that that was deliberate.
And I don't
Um,
remember which one came out first. Let's do a little bit of
I
research.
think
Was Day of
Triffids
the
came
Triffids
out
because it
first.
came
I
out in the
think so.
70s, right? Came out in 1951
Yeah,
novel,
yeah,
but then oh god, it's had a remake. How
yeah.
do
It's
these
had
things happen?
many remakes.
How do these things happen on my watch? 1963 on IMDb. So yeah, wow, a long time ago. But Day
Yeah.
of the Triffids also features a nocturnal, celestial show that has effects on the populace, and we might want to review it. So I'm not going to go into too much detail. And it's not a zombie thing at all,
No,
but it's
no.
still a
It's a
pretty cool
sci-fi horror thing, kind of.
sci-fi horror for sure. That's kind of what we're looking at with the Night of the Comet also. So sure, yeah, it must have taken some pretty heavy influences from that
Yeah,
book or show. Something that had a lot of impact on me growing up too. Honestly,
me
people
too.
were often referencing Day of the Triffids.
I feel like, I mean, because I was trying to remember when, or like when I saw this and when I saw Night of the Triffids, and I don't want to say what it couldn't have been. Maybe it was on the original Sci-Fi Channel. When did the original Sci-Fi Channel start? Or I keep wanting to say Nick at Night, but that's definitely not something that would be on Nick at Night.
I feel like the
Um,
Sci-Fi Channel didn't start till the late '90s, if then.
it was something like that. Like it would be on a lot, but like I don't know. But I remember seeing it several times, enough to say that this reminded me of that.
Interesting.
And I definitely did not see this in 1984. I remember, wow, this is going to be like rough, but I remember that I watched this on video with the VHS player that had with the VHS players that had the little, you put the tape in and you have to press it down into the machine.
Oh yeah.
It was one of those. So that was when I watched this with my sister.
So
It
quite young. Your sister was being a bad influence on you.
My sister was the best influence on me. She like liked all the cool stuff.
Okay.
And definitely was one of my primary sci-fi enablers. So, but this I remember it was definitely not 1984 because that would have been too early to have that. I want to say we probably watched this in the late 80s, like you know, at some point. I
Yeah.
definitely watched it before junior high. So
Before you probably ought to have.
probably, yeah.
Yeah. So this movie came out in November 1984. It has a short runtime, 95 minutes, which is perfect, frankly. The
Mm-hmm.
budget and the box office is what blows my mind. This movie was
Yes,
made for
700,000, man.
700,000 and made 14 million, 14 and a half almost. Like
Yeah, it was like third or something of the weekend that it came out. It did really well. So,
and this movie is so 80s. It's
oh god, yes. The
it
soundtrack is so amazing.
the soundtrack, the hair,
The
just
clothes,
the
everything.
sentiment, the moral, everything is like 100% 80s. If you feel like you've never experienced the 80s, watch this movie and then you have.
Yeah. And I will say, one of the things that I was very excited about, which I do remember watching, was that Catherine Mary Stewart, who plays the lead of, or one of the leads, Reggie Belmont, was in The Last Starfighter, which I really loved as a kid.
Oh yeah, that's a great movie.
I thought she was awesome, so I remember um, being very excited. Which this came out the same year, which is interesting.
So she was a busy lady that year.
Hmm.
And you're only I don't know how old she was, but she's supposed to be like 18 in this movie. She's probably not far off of that. And Kelly Maroney, who plays her sister Sam, is supposed to be her younger sister, like probably 16 or something. And so this is a movie about two teenage American girls in the apocalypse, and that's really what it plays to that in every scene, basically,
Mm-hmm.
because they like confound the villains based on their predictable or unpredictable teenage nature.
Mm-hmm.
So we start off with this comet is a known thing that's going to happen, and everybody's out in the streets. It's going to be like everybody go out and watch the comet. We're going to have a party. but Reggie decides to quote unquote make it with her boyfriend. What was his name?
But is he? He's not
Larry.
really her boyfriend. He's just kind of. I don't know that I would even term him that. I mean, I think
It's
they're
like
just
a
kind of.
business arrangement. What is it?
Maybe just hooking up because she's like he's not exactly the most sympathetic of characters, and she doesn't even seem all that into him. So I
She's a
think
little
she.
upset when she figures out what's happened to him.
Yeah, but not like that upset, which we'll go into later. But I mean, even the comments that she's making to him is kind of like, well, I'll knock boots with you just so I don't have to go home.
It does, yeah. It feels very transactional, but then she also gets offended when he's like, "I'll give you $15 for
Mhm.
some other like I don't know." There's some negotiating going on, and I kind of like their dialogue. It's this like fast talking. It almost feels like Sorkin dialogue
Mhm.
somehow, but it's not at all. It's like very lowbrow, but it's just back and forth, this rapid fire '80s feel to the way that they're talking to one another.
So what do you say? I'll give you $15?
Are you kidding? We spend the night in here, we end up making it, and you give me $15? Do you know what that makes me look like?
Reggie, I'm not giving you $15 for making it with me.
Okay, well, just so we have that straight, okay?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you'd be worth a lot more than $15. Everybody knows that.
So that's her evening. She basically stays in this steel booth of the projection booth, sleeping on
Yes,
the floor,
yes, yes.
eating popcorn.
And I would say like the greatest thing is sort of the explanation of this because her whatever you want to call him her entanglement Larry is just like, yeah, didn't you know this used to be an old fire shelter or something like that, like something weird. Like what does that mean?
Well, I think because
um
film used to be so flammable that they had to keep it inside the steel box. I think that's
oh
what it was
maybe.
what it was about. And Sam, this scene is pretty disturbing.
Mm-hmm.
Her stepmom is having this party. It kind of comes out that their father is often away and is in like Nicaragua fighting Sandinistas,
Mm-hmm.
which definitely puts this movie in a certain time and place, right?
Yep.
Uh, and has this crazy fight with her stepmom.
Yeah, I was, you know what? I did not remember this part at all. But I was taken aback by it. I was like, whoa, that just went there.
Yeah.
And so it's like they both slap each other, but then her stepmom like punches her.
Punches her in the face, knocks her like over some furniture, and then is just like, I'm going outside to enjoy my party with this guy that I'm boning behind your dad's back while he's in Nicaragua. Like it's an insane turn of events,
Yep.
but it's all dealt with in this kind of like
Yeah.
offhand. This is very normal
But it
80s
also
way.
sets up this particular character, Sam Belmont, the kid sister of Reggie. Interestingly enough, they both are named Regina and Samantha, but they're called Reggie and Sam, so I think that's funny.
Mm-hmm.
But she's played by Kelly Maroney, who you may remember from Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And she was also a pretty famous soap actress.
Yeah. Apparently,
But
Catherine Mary Stewart was also on a soap opera before this film.
ah,
I forget which one it was,
but I remember Kelly Maroney from Fast Times, and but this whole scene sets up her character like she's definitely not a pushover. She's pretty. She stands her ground even when she gets punched, basically. And it also sets up the relationship with their stepmom, so that later we don't feel too bad about what happens to her. But she, because of this fight, goes off and sleeps in like a steel shed.
garden shed, which I have to
Yeah.
wonder how many garden
Yeah.
sheds are made of steel, but sure. No,
Okay.
I'll accept it. But yeah, everybody who does not spend the night in a steel box
Dies.
ends up either turning into dust, which I think appears to be the majority. They turn into
Mhm.
this orange dust, and their clothes are all that's left on the ground, or they go slower, which I think is the main conceit, right? You're fast, you either dissolve quickly or you go slowly, and that is the zombie stage. It's hard to tell exactly how long that takes, but it almost seems like hours, not.
Yeah.
And so this zombie epidemic is extremely short-lived. It's
Mhm.
kind of the other side of this. This comet has gone. This apparently isn't going to happen again. It's it's like a Halley's Comet sort of thing. It might be, maybe it'll come back in 1,000 years, but they don't really have to worry about more zombies once this thing is over. That takes you to the conclusion. But in the meantime, they have all kinds of problems. number one being understanding what has happened to their
Right.
world.
Well, and okay, so let's just talk about the premise of this. So in the beginning of the film, there's this whole voiceover about, how the dinosaurs were made extinct and all this other stuff. And the thing is that the premise of this is that basically all the people infected by whatever this comet thing is ultimately turn to dust. There's no bones left, just calcium deposits. So, I mean, how would you find fossils, I guess, is my question. At some point. But maybe maybe I'm thinking
I
too
think
hard about
you're
it.
trying to go too hard into this.
But anyway, this is the sort of the way in which these characters process this event is really, I don't want to say nonchalantly, but there is a humorous aspect to it because they just are very matter of fact about it all.
I think nonchalance is exactly what this movie is. It's nonchalant, optimistic, lighthearted.
Yeah.
In the face of all of this, a mass a genocide event,
Mm-hmm.
they are totally just like, let's go shopping. Like, oh, Daddy taught us how to use guns, so I know where there's some MAC-10s, and then they find some submachine pistols and basically have a good time. I mean, they're leery when
True.
When Hector shows up. They don't trust him because Reggie's also had a run-in with a zombie in an alley, which is
Right.
probably the closest she's come to death. But they also can handle themselves, these two.
Right. And Chakotay, I mean, I wouldn't trust him either when he shows up.
Who?
Do you not? Robert Beltran.
Chakotay?
Chakotay.
Who's he? Oh, from Star Trek. Sorry.
Yes, Voyager.
Yes. Took me a minute.
I forgot, I'll admit, when I first started watching this, I mean, I saw his name pop up and I'm like, oh, like I would totally forgot that he was in this.
I knew I recognized him from stuff, but yeah,
Yep.
that's a good callback.
And this was early days for him.
It's early days for everybody.
Yep.
The only person this isn't early days for is Jeffrey Lewis, the leader of the think tank, because he's a huge actor. He's been in everything.
Yeah, there's like a lot of nonchalance even in the way so Robert Beltran's character Hector basically gives the Sam and Reggie the rundown about what the zombies are, what they're doing, because basically he survives by he picked up some girl and was like hooking up with her in the steel cab of his truck, and that's how he survived. And then apparently she got eaten by zombies. And he immediately calls them zombies as well, so that's interesting. And so we got some, some sort of like basics from him. We've got a very minor reaction from Reggie about the fact that she now realizes what happened to Larry. And then they go off shopping, and Hector goes to try to see if his family's alive.
Goes down to San Diego. It's that's a weird part of this film. It almost feels a little bit like filler. Why do they need to split the party? Why does he have to drive as far as San Diego?
I think they need to split the party because they need to have enough time to have the weird interaction with the mall stock boys.
The stock boy gang.
And I do think that they want to have the zombie kid, the chase through with him, and they couldn't figure out how else to do that. That was actually really funny. That was like so awesome.
Yeah, it's
His
curious.
reactions were amazing.
Yeah.
So that was good. And then we also have to have the intervention with the scientists to split the party so that, we can have the cavalry come in. Yep.
Yeah. True. So the think tank, they are very briefly shown at the end of the voiceover at the beginning of the film. Like, some people had an idea that this was going to happen all along. Mm-hmm. And isn't it funny that they call it a think tank? Like, that's their name for this group. I mean, these days think tanks are these like PAC funded things that are in DC and just publish subversive news articles. Seems like is really all they do. But in the 80s, they were building bunkers and getting ready for zombie apocalypse.
Apparently. Though I will say, all right, so this whole think tank, they put together this underground bunker and they leave the ventilation system on, which I thought was kind of weird.
It's hilarious.
And also this, even though they're in this whole underground bunker and all this other stuff, yet our heroes, our survivors, have somehow survived without anything fancy, because it's not like the film room is airtight, or maybe it is, or the cab of the truck or the shed is airtight, but apparently all of them do better than in this underground bunker. So
Is it
I
clear
don't
to you?
know.
I mean, I know we're skipping over the stock boys, so let's maybe just cover that. These kids, there's like 6 of them.
Hello out there in television land. All right, here's the deal. If Bachelorette number 1 isn't out here in half a tick, I'm gonna ice Bachelorette number 2. Got it?
It's a little bit like Dawn of the Dead when they go into the mall and then they have to contend with the mall security guards. I'm
Yeah.
talking about the 2004. 4?
Yeah.
6? I'm talking about the Snyder one.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's a little bit like that, except that they don't ever come to an understanding
Nope.
with this mall security guards. And there's this huge shootout, and that's after this huge 80s mall montage, which no 80s movie can do without.
Right. And it's almost like the weird Stockboy interactions. It's almost very like Joker-esque, the way that the guy kind of is crazy, and I think they're implying because they're, I guess, partially infected.
Well, the guy, when he takes his sunglasses off, you
Yeah,
can tell
clearly
he
is he infected, but
he's like 75% zombie, but they're
Yeah.
still, most of them are not, or not
Right.
as far along. So it's curious, why, yeah, this is a thing that actually I don't completely understand, because after the Stockboy incident, and they get bailed out by the think tank who shows up in their helicopter to come rescue them, and they've already shown the think tankers rescuing 2 children who were in San Bernardino and bringing them to the bunker. We don't really know why yet. But then they kind of split up. 2 of the scientists stay behind with Blondie,
Mhm.
Sam. Why? Do you understand why they think that she's not worth taking back for her assets?
Because they think she's infected because she keeps scratching, so that's part of
Oh,
it. Because they think
yes.
she has a rash, and apparently she just has eczema. She's just prone to rashes.
She has nervous eczema. Yeah, that's right. I remember now. Okay.
But the thing I think is like and this is part of the nonchalance of this whole thing. I just don't really buy that Reggie would leave her there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't buy that she would become separated. I know that they have to figure out a way to do that, and that's fine, but I don't think that that's actually what would happen. So that was kind of silly. And if anybody's going to wait for Chakotay, wouldn't it be her? So, which is a sort of excuse they give Sam. They're like, oh, you should wait for Hector.
Well, but
so-
Sam's into him, so
Yeah, I guess, but it just doesn't seem like Reggie would buy that either.
yeah.
I do enjoy the fact that the kids that they find are like carrying these prop things like a bunny and a football, and they just kind of like walk around with them all the time. It's
In their
like,
pajamas.
in their jammies. That's pretty awesome.
It is funny. So the doctor lady, who's the doctor? Audrey White, Mary Woronov. She's pretty cool. I don't know. She's like a cool character.
Yep.
Very calmly murders her colleague.
Yep.
And then sets up Sam for this later reveal. We all think that she's killed her. But then waits for Hector at the radio station, has an interaction with him. Meanwhile, Reggie has arrived at the bunker and is getting some sort of debrief. We get more and more insight into what's going on at the bunker, and none of it's good. It's all bad. These are bad people. They really want to know if she's had hepatitis.
Yep.
Have you ever had hepatitis?
Tags. You ever wear scissors?
No. Have you ever had hepatitis?
kids.
A lot, and also cancer and whatever. We should also note that Mary Woronov is very much a cult favorite. I don't know if you recall, but she was in like a lot of stuff like Charlie's Angels and that kind of thing. But she also is well known for the things she used to do with Andy Warhol,
Okay, like what?
which I was not familiar with any of that until we started watching this film and I was doing my research. But she would do the whole exploding plastic inevitable thing, the presentation of the Velvet Underground, And then she was in Chelsea Girls, which I've never seen. So.
Looks like she was a pretty busy lady in the late 60s since throughout
Yeah.
the 70s and 80s. She did a lot of work. And honestly, she's worked a lot up until 2012.
Yeah, and I specifically remember her from Charlie's Angels, and she was quite prolific. I mean,
Yeah.
it's pretty cool. And also she was in Eating Raoul with Robert
Beltran.
Beltran. So yeah, very cool. And I liked her character in this. I thought she was she kind of kept it together and just did some really awesome stuff, and then offed herself politely.
Very nicely.
So that she wasn't a danger to Robert Beltran. So
some of the criticism I've seen of this film is that they don't let Warrenov and Beltran stretch their wings enough. Like, these are two amazing actors, and they're not given the opportunity to really shine. But you know what she has, she does well, and like I got most of my inference about the plot from her character and her scenes, like when she's misspelling the word memory loss.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, oh, this is actually a nice way to show how things are going. You don't really understand everything, and she eventually does explain it to Hector at the radio station.
Sort of, but I think we're supposed to get that in her notes she has all the explanation there.
Yeah, exactly.
So apparently he figures it out, but that was kind of funny that she doesn't really explain it. She's just like, okay, now I'm gonna off myself. I've left you my missive.
And then Hector has to go mount a rescue operation, which is kind of funny. He decides to put on a character to do it.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. Like, he becomes like a country dude, and he wears like a country outfit sort of.
Howdy, partner. How you doing?
Who are you?
Name's Heck. Heck Gomez. Hey, them's real fine duds you got there.
It's just it's a little bit hilarious, and it turns out that oh my gosh, Sam isn't dead. She's just been sodium pentothal. I mean, that's very late, but yeah. And meanwhile, Reggie has broken out of containment and is causing havoc inside the base. And what's his name? Dr. Carter is becoming more and more zombie-like. And it turns out that what they wanted to do was just drain the blood of healthy humans, and that would somehow prolong their existence. Turns out, though, that the only healthy humans they're able to find are children, which is what makes them super evil.
You know, they kind of play that up a lot. Like, they tell the kids that they're going to go see Santa Claus before they want to, like, make them brain dead and stuff, so...
So messed up, honestly.
It's pretty messed up. But that doesn't happen. Don't worry, gentle audience. They rescue them just in time, and then the heroes go out, and then they take a really long time for their revenge. Like, the pacing of this was just so funny.
Yeah, when Hector stops the car like 30 feet away from the base, and he's like, wait for it.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a really long time for this to happen, so it was pretty funny.
Honestly, the epilogue scene, I think, is one of the most interesting to me, because
it's weird.
This is what flies the least with what our modern take on zombie movies and horror is. In that they're literally throwing away their guns.
Mm-hmm.
They've now adopted these two other children from San Bernardino. Like, they're now this 18-year-old, and however old Hector is, he's probably 23 or something. Now they are the parents of these two children.
And they're like dressing them up in Easter clothing or something. I don't know.
To take family photos while they throw away their guns. And I'm like, all right, you're at day 4 of the apocalypse, and you feel like you can throw your guns away.
Yeah, I think not.
It's such an optimistic view of the end of the world, where they're like, everything's fine, and some dim-witted teenage boy drives up in a convertible, and that's Sam's exit strategy, and now she's happy because she was just always so jealous of Reggie.
Hey, you guys are survivors too, huh?
You know, he's the video game mystery guy, so.
He is?
Yeah, that's like his license plate is DMK.
Oh my gosh.
Missed it, huh?
You know me. I watch movies to miss most of the references. Mm. So he's actually from their neighborhood too.
Yep.
What are the odds? But they just drive off into the sunset. Like, there's nothing. They're not worried about anything.
Nope. It's just like, hey, everything's just gonna be peachy keen from now on.
I mean, meanwhile, have you caught up on The Walking Dead yet, season 9?
No.
Oh, Jay, it's like you don't even care anymore.
No, I do care. It's just, I have to pick my moments to watch it
Yes.
because somebody who shall remain nameless can't watch this show with me.
So, have you watched any of the season?
I think I watched the premiere.
All right, then I will hold my tongue. However, let me just say that I think that this season, more than any other, is proving that life after the apocalypse, no matter what its nature, comes with its own share of issues.
Okay.
So, and I think that this movie just decides everything's going to be okay. There's 6 people living after the apocalypse. I guess DMK showing up shows that there might be more, but they're all teenagers or younger somehow.
And nobody's evil.
And everybody's just cool. Yeah, because the only evil people were in the think tank, so we're good. I honestly, I found it refreshing. I think that we, currently our media focuses so much on doom and gloom
Dark,
that I was like, awesome, okay, yeah. This is not at all, I feel like, how this would play out, but I'm okay with you guys suggesting that it could be.
Although I do remember, even as a kid watching this, and my sister and I talked about this after, feeling very like, this is like, I don't think things would work out quite so peachy keen here. I don't think this would work out. I don't think that there would be this, like, I don't know. We were definitely in disagreement about the ending, about the reality of that. So I recall that it made us very unhappy. And this may have just been the influence of Night of the Living Dead and all of that stuff too, possibly. I do like the very brief comment about consumerism in it, which was like really funny.
Do you mean during the mall scene or later?
When the scientists are going to try to find them, and they were like,
yes.
Well, I guess they'll be at the mall, but there's so many other palaces to consumerism here. Amazing.
Yeah. Well, also the line, what would 2 adolescents with nothing to do, where would 2 adolescents with nothing to do go? Mm-hmm. And they base this on, they find a car that they've shot up with the Mac 10s, and they're just like, oh, this happened at least half an hour ago.
They must be at the mall.
That is a little bit funny.
I thought that it was funny, it was lighthearted. It was definitely, I can see why it became a cult classic, and I can also see why they're remaking it, though I kind of feel like, I don't know that they can successfully remake this in the same sort of spirit. Apparently, based upon the rumors, the remake is going to be a lot more horror and less comedy. But I think the comedy piece of it, the lightheartedness, is kind of what makes it.
Yeah, that's why I'm kind of skeptical about a remake.
Yeah.
I think that a remake in the same spirit maybe wouldn't be as successful, which is a shame, but because it was a product of its time. And unfortunately, I think a product of, the late 20 teens is going to be something where everybody dies,
right.
or 2 people live, but it looks really bad for them anyway.
Right, right.
So,
and of course we can't get away from this without saying that the sort of inspiration for Buffy Summers was the Sam character. Apparently, Joss Whedon saw this and really loved it, and that was kind of what planted the seed for Buffy. So.
Kind of planted the seed for every female character he's ever done ever since.
Yeah, pretty much. Although obviously I did not think about this until we decided to watch this again, and I'm like, oh, I can totally see that, just in the way that character was portrayed. So I was like, I get it. So that was kind of cool. But yeah.
I think that's kind of the balance. We enjoyed it, I think, is what I'm picking up. Even though it maybe isn't, it's definitely not like the stuff that we've been seeing. No. It's so 80s, but then that's a nice kind of like throwback to a time, even though they lived under the threat of nuclear war, they were still pretty positive in their post-apocalyptic scenarios.
Yeah, and I do think that this could be a fun movie night if you have a bunch of people and you want to just do a silly, 80s movie night. Because, seriously, the soundtrack on this thing is amazing. Just all synths and very, just amazing. So, I think it's fun. And I mean, is it gonna, totally like, do I think that it is a complete masterpiece? No, but it's definitely a cult classic. So
Yeah, definitely.
that's that. If you're in the mood for that kind of thing, go for it.
It's a shame, honestly, that we hadn't gotten around to reviewing it sooner.
And it's on Amazon Prime, so if you're a Prime member, it's free.
There you go.
Cool.
So next time we're gonna be trying to either review Anna and the Apocalypse, or if that doesn't pan out because of my remote location, we will then review Night Eats the World, which will be, I think, a less optimistic view of zombie apocalypse. Where I believe the synopsis is young man wakes up after a rave to find that everybody is a zombie.
Yes. And either way, we will be reviewing both of these at some point. So
Yes.
it just depends on the order that we can actually see them in. So.
Correct.
But until next time, if you'd like to give us your thoughts on Night of the Comet, send us an email at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. You can tweet at us. ReanimatedPcast is the handle. Or you can leave a note on our site, reanimatedpodcast.com.
Indeed. Also, like I said last time, if you have an Amazon Echo, just say, "Hey, Alexa, play Reanimated Podcast," and you should get the most recent episode. Because of technology, and that's pretty cool. I don't know if you've tried that yet, HA, but it's fun.
Well, then one would have to imagine that I have a spy in my home. No, not so much.
I'm all about spies.
I know.
Yeah. So anyway, you can check that out. And in the meantime, I think I've already covered all the meantimes. So I'm going to say thank you for listening.
Ciao.
All right, bye.